This is the culture of agriculture. My name is Andy Junkin, and with me tonight is one of the pioneers in the field of studying the science of family decision making and the science of the business culture of agriculture, Dr. Bob Milligan. And Bob is contacting us tonight from Minnesota. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
And Bob, why don't you tell us your background and about yourself?
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this broadcast tonight. I grew up in the thumb of Michigan. Michigan's the geography state, of course, and on a farm that we had some cows and we grew some crops and sold a few of them. My brother's brother and nephew are still there. The cows are gone, but they have about 4,000 acres of corn, dry beans, soybeans, and wheat. And so from there, I did what you do in agriculture in Michigan. I went to Michigan State. I sometimes joke that I got on the education train and forgot to get off. I graduated with a degree in dairy science, but it's really fallen in love with agricultural economics. Finished a master's degree, spent a little bit of time there working in the department, and then I went to the University of California at Davis to get a PhD. Which is kind of ironic in a sense today, because I went there because it was a very quantitative department, and now I do the people stuff. So from there, I was fortunate to have some opportunities to join a faculty, and chose to go to Cornell University in upstate Finger Lakes area in Ithaca, New York. Spent 28 years there. I did some research, taught several classes, including one in human resource management, and I did a lot of work in extension. Most of the time my extension point was 25 to 50%. And then in 2003, I for personal reasons needed to move to Minnesota, and I got a job with a former colleague of mine who owns a business management consulting firm called Dairy Strategies. He brought me into the company to upgrade the capability of the company, and is in the areas of leadership, supervision, hiring, communication skills, conflict resolution, all of the kind of people things that some people call soft skills. I don't particularly like that term, because it kind of implies they aren't learnable skills. They really are. And so now I do some projects, but I have a number of ongoing clients across commodities, field crops, dairy, and so forth. And
so what do you mean by
actually live in St. Paul, Minnesota?
Sorry, what did you say, Bob?
I actually live in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
Go.
And what do you mean by business culture?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it is a new area, and it's one I've spent a lot of time talking about and thinking about, because as we'll talk about, it probably is the ultimate competitive advantage for a company. You know, think of Apple or Google or a company like that really people want to work for. And so let's think about what that means. And I think we need to start to think about people. You know, think of someone who's very outgoing, very happy. Okay, think of someone else who's really very bashful. Now, what you're seeing in that happiness and that bashfulness are the external signs of their personality. Now, business culture we can refer to as the personality of the business, okay, or the personality of the farm. And you can see some external things of that. How are people interacting if you go there as a consultant or an agribusiness professional or to visit? But the real culture is what goes on there. How do people interact? Are there good relationships? Are they working hard? Are they passionate about the business? Are they invested in the success of the business, or are they just there to collect a paycheck and go home?
Why is it so important now to be talking about business culture than 28 years ago when you started at Cornell?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons. One has to do with the fact that we as a society have changed. If you think about what we refer to as the generations, we started with what we call the matures, sometimes called the greatest generation, which they really were. Then there are we millennials. and then the Xers, and now the millennials. Okay, and really, in each generation, obviously you can't over stereotype, but in each generation, the importance of life balance, the importance of the things beside work have become more important and a higher priority. It doesn't mean, as some people interpret, that young people aren't willing to work, but they aren't willing to work and sacrifice everything for a job. And so that life balance really emanates from the culture. The other thing that's a part of that maturations really of our society is that people now, it used to be nice to work at a job that you were passionate about, and fortunately most farmers were. Maybe one of the unique areas in our society, but lots of people didn't do that. It's become more and more important, and millennials certainly the most important, that they want to work in a job that gives them meaning. Okay, and that all emanates from the culture. It's how you're treated in the culture, what you're expected to be, what the core values and the vision are of the culture. And the other thing is, we know a lot more about how important it is. And thirdly, or fourthly, I'm not sure what I'm at, Andy, but is that attracting great employees has become much more difficult. One, the skill level of the employees we need to succeed on a farm today are much greater than they were 20 or 30 or whatever years ago. And the labor market's more competitive. And so particularly for retaining employees, what kind of an employer we are, I like to encourage people to be a preferred employer, and your image in the community, and that all emanates from your culture. You know, if people aren't happy, if they aren't satisfied, they're going to know about it with social media today. And so I just think it's more important. As I think I've already said, it may become the most competitive advantage. It certainly is a huge competitive advantage for companies like Apple and Google and Southwest Airlines, for example.
What kind of results are those companies getting that have a really healthy business culture? What kind of competitive advantage are you actually seeing?
Well, it's mostly in being able to attract the best people. I mean, it has to do with how hard they're willing to work when they get there, but a lot of it is just, you know, in many ways you don't see it like you do because you don't have draft day or anything, but you know, it's really no different in business than it is in sports. It's hard to have a winning team in sports if you don't have talent. It takes more than talent. Okay, it takes a culture, but you've got to have talent, and so a culture will help you attract. An attractive culture will help you attract and retain great employees.
You know, I think that's pretty sound. The thing is that a lot of farm employees, yeah. You see. I walk onto family farms where there's parents and the children just do not get along. You quickly see that the key employees go get better jobs somewhere else.
Right.
And it's not because of the pay, it's because of the business culture. And I think
there's another piece to that. The research is pretty clear that about two-thirds of people who willingly leave a job, this is across all sectors, this isn't farm data, about two-thirds of people who leave a job willingly don't leave the company, they leave their supervisor. And so that's part of what a great culture has, is puts a premium on supervision and relationships with your supervisor.
And I think with where things could be going with a shortage of labor in the agriculture sector, with a few Mexicans being deported, I mean that again, being able to attract quality labor in a small town where labor is short, I mean it's pretty key. Now,
I like to talk about is that you really, as a farm or other small business, you want to become a preferred employer. You want to be the place where people want to work, and a lot of that.
Like South Dakota, you only have so many people to work from.
Exactly.
To draw from.
Exactly.
And that's what's unique about agriculture. As opposed to New York City, Donald Trump, the way he manages people in New York City. I mean, he just fires people because there's a lineup of people wanting that job. Or Ford used to manage people in Detroit. I mean, we got to adapt a different way to go about managing people. What have you seen really being effective? Just to get off topic here a little bit, what have you seen really work effectively as far as what signs of a healthy business culture within a family farm?
Well, one of them certainly is high productivity. I mean, people are working hard. They're enjoying what they're doing. Maybe one of the keys is low turnover, especially among great employees. You're keeping great employees because they want to stay there. There's high morale and job satisfaction. You know, when they go to the local pizza parlor or bar or sporting event or whatever, they're speaking proudly of your farm. They're not running it down. I think that might be the most important characteristic. There's minimal confusion. I like to refer to clarity as chalking the field. People know what they're doing. They know what's expected of them. They get feedback, and there's just minimal politics and nitpicking at each other, and internal strife between employees and even between employees and ownership.
Yeah. How is farming different than other industry sectors as far as the kids coming home and joining the family business?
Well, I don't want two things. One, it is very different, but it's not as different as we think it is. Okay, I like to say that farming is uniquely unique, meaning it's unique in the sense that yes, there's some uniqueness, but it's not unique in the sense that farms are different and everything else is the same. Every industry has its uniquenesses. Farming obviously is probably the biggest industry, at least the producer level, that's still characterized by many small businesses. I mean, we refer to large farms as large, but compared to the businesses in almost any other sector, they're peanuts. And there is opportunity for many people to be involved in ownership.
Okay. And I mean, how would you characterize? I've heard you speak about making a comparison of somebody joining a company and having to work their way up the corporate ladder, and how is that different with a family farm?
Okay, it's really a family farm or any other family business, but think about if you and a colleague both graduate from Minnesota or Michigan State or Purdue or wherever, okay, and your colleague is going to John Deere or Case IH or Cargill or something like that. They're going to have a job, and hopefully it'll be a very rewarding job, but their input, at least initially and perhaps for their whole career, into the direction of John Deere or Case IH or Cargill or whomever will be zero. Only if they move up into upper level management will they ever have any impact that you would have as an owner. As their colleague going back to the farm, hopefully is going to be involved in that from day one, and maybe even already has been while he's in college. Certainly my nephew, who's now gone back a year and a half back from Purdue on the family farm. I mean, he had input into what was going on at Milligan Farms while he was in college and while he was in high school even a little bit. And so but at least when you go back, when you're joining what I call the leadership team or the family leadership team. You're joining that group that hopefully in some structured way, but not always, is really determining how are we articulating and continuing the vision of our legacy and what is our strategy and even how do we need to make some changes in our culture. That's the ultimate difficult thing. But sometimes young people come home with ideas and make that happen, especially in how employees are treated.
And you and I were talking off air. We were talking about the importance of, quite often you get called out to family farms where there's a dispute related to succession planning. And one of the key issues is that the son or daughter are just not taking responsibility for the success of the company. And how important is it for a son and daughter to even if they do not have ownership in the operation yet, how important is it for them to think in terms of ownership, and have that, and how key is that to getting extra drive out of that employee?
Well, I think it's very key. I mean, one of the things that's interesting, I mean, what we're really trying to do with everyone in the workforce, I'll come back to your direct question in a minute.
Yeah,
but really what we're trying to do in the vision and the culture is we're really trying to have everyone in the workforce act like an owner. In other words, they own the business in their head and their heart, not necessarily in their pocketbook, but they are committed to the success of the business going forward. Now, with the family member coming back, even if he starts out as an employee, he's trying to prove himself. Okay, I mean, I actually like to I kind of talked about the difference between John Deere or Case IH and the farm. In some ways, I think we should think about it more similarly, in the sense that there should be a career path. And it's probably the career path from a structure standpoint will go from employee to junior partner and ultimately to senior partner. But that career path can be either kind of vertical promotion. You move from the milking center manager to the dairy manager, or you can think of it now. We talk a lot about horizontal job advancement, and that's just adding more responsibilities. And so we really need to think about the movement of young people through the business or into the business as a career. Most of the senior generation, the farm grew with them. They were the sole proprietor in their 20s in many cases. And so the farm grew as they grew. Well, now the farm's too big. Most people are coming back as partners, and they're starting out, and they have to find their way through the business, and that's really career planning.
Okay. If you're the next generation of farmers, and your parents are very controlling, and they do not involve you in strategic planning or even decision making, how do you change that situation? Well,
not easily. I mean, the first thing is you ought to have some of the discussion about what your role is going to be when you come back, before you ever come back.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the best time.
Yeah.
Okay, to get started. Okay. Yeah. And that doesn't really happen very often. But that's really the best time. And then I think it's really important, even if it involves involving someone like you or I, but to set up a structure. Think about it. The John Deere and the Case IH and have boards of directors. I'm actually on the board of directors of 3 volunteer organizations. Okay, and we meet. We don't just kind of we meet. We have an agenda, and I think that kind of structure. I'm not running any. I'm a president of 2 of them, but I'm still not running them. Okay, I'm organizing the meetings, but there's discussion there to come up with direction, and that's what this family team or strategic leadership team needs to happen. And one of the things that I found that's really interesting is we tend to think things are going to change a lot in terms of interaction among owners when we go from 1 to 2. There's also a huge change when you go from 2 to 3. Because when you have 3 people, anytime 2 of them are talking, 1 is left out by definition. And so I think a 2-owner thing probably can operate fairly informally. I'd still like some structure. But once you get past 2, you need that time, that structured time to interact, to talk about strategy, to talk about processes, hiring processes, people processes, etc.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just tell us about dairy strategies.
Dairy strategies, I said briefly when I came in, we're really kind of a full service management. We, all the way from financial to we've done some quality things, and my piece of it is the people things. I have a number of ongoing clients. I go and visit 1-day, 2-day things and make recommendations. But I'm trained in finance. I can still do finance. We have some pretty sophisticated strategic and financial planning models that we continue to use, but my focus is always on the people and developing that leadership team, developing supervisors. A big part of my work is ongoing coaching, ongoing interaction. I call it coaching. I have to be a little careful about that. I'm not a certified coach. I have some of those skills, but I do a lot of one-on-one on the phone. We do stuff like this on the internet, and I do site visits to my farms on an ongoing basis.
So every client situation is different, but what are the 3 things that you've seen every farm family should have as a basics, and that you often prescribe when you get called in to, say, sort out a family situation?
Well, I think that everything really revolves around communication. You have to be able to respect each other. You have to be able to interact. I'm a big believer in collaboration, synergy. 1 + 1 is greater than 2, or 1 + 1 + 1 is greater than 3. And so the ability to interact, it's in the vernacular, it's called relatedness. People have to enjoy each other. That doesn't mean you don't provide negative feedback, or I talk about redirection feedback. Okay, I often talk about the fact that it's about being fair, not about just being nice. So communication skills are one, and that really kind of leads into the other one, and that's some structure. Structure both to the leadership that we've talked about, but also structure to feedback. If you go into any major organization, they have a performance feedback system. And I have my own. I call it the workforce success system. It's more collegial than most performance management systems. But you need some way to provide ongoing performance management and build into that culture a continuous kind of a continuous improvement mentality, because the world is changing so much faster today. I was actually on a program at a university, and there was a panel of succession, and there were 3 families there. The young people had all gone to the university that I won't identify, but I listened to that discussion. I was a little bit shocked, because the senior generation kind of was saying, well, we sent our young sons and daughters to Purdue to get the information they need for this generation. Well, that might have worked 2 generations ago. Now they're getting the basis to continue to get more information and more professional development to continue to grow and get better.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the third one. The third one that I really have focused on is some kind of ongoing, continuing professional development. Training.
Give us a typical example of a farm that you've worked with over the last 10 years. And, I know that every situation you deal with is quite unique. But, give us an example of, say, a son or daughter that are in their mid-30s that are just having a problem transitioning leadership and decision-making from one generation to the next. How would you?
I'll tell you about one. I got a good one. I obviously won't identify it, but there was actually a father, a son, and a daughter. And the daughter was, when I first went there, the daughter was very involved. And the son was still there, but he wasn't doing much. I mean, they basically, if he'd been an employee, he would have been fired. Yeah. And he was disillusioned. And so we worked hard with him. He's now the whole outside manager for this dairy, doing very well, growing more into the business. The daughter was doing very well, but she'd inherited some of her father's characteristics of being too short with people. She likes to joke that it took me 2 years to learn how to give redirection feedback. So I think, and the father's moving more into retirement, so we're still working for how they interact. But from a financial standpoint, they were an incredibly successful business and continue to be. But they just work a lot better together, and I don't know where they'd be.
And you've been working with them for several years, correct?
Yeah, pretty close. I think it'd be about 10, actually. That's probably the farm that I've worked with on a fairly intense basis the longest.
Okay. How often do you go out to that farm?
I'm probably there 5 or 6 times a year. There are 5 people at the moment on that farm that I call on a weekly basis. I don't necessarily talk to them on a weekly basis, but we and they call me if the part of any arrangement we have with this is if somebody has an issue, they don't need to wait until our call day after tomorrow. They can call me right now. I don't always answer, of course. I have other things to do, but I get back to them quickly, and I think that's one of the most valuable things. You know, they have an issue with a partner, an issue with an employee, or an issue with a landlord, or whatever, and they just got somebody to bounce ideas around with.
Okay. Well, Bob, how does anybody get a hold of you?
Well, my phone number is 651-647-0495.
Could you repeat that again?
I sure will. 651-647-0495. And my email address is rmilligan, RMILLIGAN, at TerrySmith.com. Terry Smith is my partner, or he's actually the owner of Dairy Strategies, but we operate it more as partners.
And your website is dairystrategies.com, is that not?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, Bob, I just and you work with folks you're based out of Minnesota, and you work with a lot of folks in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the surrounding area, but you work all across North America. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I do. I mean, most of the clients that I work with intensively, like the one I was just telling you about, are within a couple-hour drive of here. But I have more coaching and leadership development contracts with people that I talk to on a frequent basis, you know, in several states. I haven't done a lot myself, but Dairy Strategies itself has done a fair amount internationally as well. Terry's been to China 3 or 4 times.
Cool. Well, Bob, it's you're a pioneer in the field of the culture of agriculture, and it's a really big honor to be able to have you on the show. Been looking forward to it from day one. So thanks very much for your time, and appreciate that a lot.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.